climate, there's no bigger gratification.
These weather anomalies are going to continue?
Not just continue, get worse.
Widespread flooding has slowed transportation.
I think we're on the verge of a major climate shift.
Death is coming. Death is the result, it's the consequence. So I urge you one last time, for yourself, for your family, to climb that mountaintop. You know what I'm talking about.
I, within myself, my little tiny mind, I can foresee a time when everybody gets nervous when they hear the word thunderstorm. Imagine that. I can see a hypercane forming.
As we gather today in the name of Yahweh, for Enoch said, as he was a great patriarch of Yahweh, that Yahweh gave his people a tongue for one reason, and that was to praise his name. Of course, it's also used for other things too, and to communicate in that, but the first thing was to praise the name of Yahweh, our Father. Now, of course, Enoch, the great patriarch, was taken away and never tasted of death, just like Elijah was taken by the river Jordan on a chariot of fire when his scribe Elisha was with him. And of course, it's another time of, shall we say, when the mantle hit the river, and the river went backwards. Many times the river went backwards. Even at the time of Joshua, when the Levites and the Levitical priesthood, carrying the Ark of the Covenant, when their ankles were deep into the river stopped flowing and backed up so the people could go over on dry land, as was the case of the Red Sea. Many instances where Yahweh showed his glory to his people. Yahweh's people are the white Western European peoples and the nations thereof, including the United States of America, the land of Manasseh, who still bear the symbols of the tribe of Manasseh as they departed from bondage in Egypt, with the olive branch and the arrows as the emblem, which is still on the seal today. It also includes Iceland. Yahweh our Father has given his people 759 laws to live by, to be prosperous. And of course his people, the descendants of Jacob, who were surnamed Israel, and you read that from right to left, El-Ra-Ish, which means the sons, Yahweh ruling with his sons. It has nothing to do with religion. Religion is as of like Dagon and other gods that other people had at that time. Religion and controlled religion today tell you that when God comes, it's going to be all love, all happiness. And the churches have reserved flights for them on flight 666 on the rapture flight. And they're telling them, don't worry about anything because he's all love and he's coming for you and you're going to fly away. Well, the rapture is ruptured. Flight 666 has flat tires. And Flight 666 is out of gas. Because you see, the Father put forth a commandment, occupy until I come. Now, when you look at the word rapture, it is not even in the Greek Septuagint. It is not even in what they call the parchments or the scriptures. This is very important because you see, the people are fed lies, and they're fed those lies for so long that they start to believe them. But Yahweh says, I am perfect, and what I say goes. I am he who created the heavens and the earth. I created the foundations of the earth and all the substance upon that earth. And he said to his people, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb. Just as he said, not only to David, but he said to many of the prophets. We're going to have a dissertation today about our Father Yahweh. And possibly because what we're going to expect and to see from him. Because this is very important. Because, you know, Enoch, he wrote as the books of Enoch and the secrets of Enoch. He told how Yahweh controls the treasures of the heavens and the elements of the heavens, the snow and the frost and the ice and the rain. He controls the windows of the elements because he created them. He created the third dimension molecular. He brought forth the visible from the invisible. And there's many different dimensions. There's the alkaline dimension. There's many different dimensions. But you see, unless the people start to heed the warnings of those who profess and believe Yahweh, they are in dire straits. They're walking a very thin tightrope right now at this time. For the wrath of Yahweh will not be held back. And as the Father said, as I have set it in motion, no man can set it asunder. No religion can set it asunder. No political organization can set it asunder. For I have put forth the date and the time of my retribution unto a wicked people.
Over 7 million mentally ill and emotionally disturbed children in America.
We should film
This program is about some of those children and the institutions they live in. Children of Darkness, next on non-fiction television. This program contains language and sequences some viewers may find disturbing. 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 His name is Brian. Brian believes that somebody is following him.
Mark. Leave him alone, Mark.
Brian suffers from mania and schizophrenia. He's been this way since he was 4 years old.
Mark, stay there. Let him go. Mark.
One day, if he's lucky, Brian may go to a group home for the mentally ill. But there are just 5 in all of Pennsylvania, with just 45 young people living in them. Many of the children are chronically mentally ill. They'll never see what we see, hear what we hear, think in ways we do. They're psychotic, schizophrenic. They suffer from organic brain damage and autism. Diane comes from a prominent Tucson family. She was a straight A student and won a scholarship to the University of Arizona. But drinking and drugs became problems she couldn't control. Denise ran away from Eastern State Hospital just before her 18th birthday. Neither hospital officials or friends know where she is or what's happened to her. 17-year-old Andrew Zamora. He was agitated, withdrawn, suspicious. His diagnosis? Acute paranoid disorder. In the United States today, 5 million acutely mentally ill children need treatment of a very different kind. 500,000 are psychotic, 2 million schizophrenic. 1 in 5 suffers from depression. They need immediate psychiatric help. They're teenagers who have victimized others and themselves. The kids are almost all white, from upper middle class and wealthy homes. These are children who have acted out, often violently. More than half of the children you've seen in this film will retain their illnesses into adult life, and most of them will be sent to adult institutions. For parents, what looms ahead is frightening. A realization that their children may never get well, that their lives may be spent in institutions.
I'd be a lot freer if people like you were put in prison as retaliation for the collective crime of racism, anti-Semitism, misogyny, and homophobia. All you fucking God-botherers are war criminals and liars and charlatans. Atheism forever!
Now we are going to have a study today, a dissertation, lecture, sermon, in the name of Yahweh. And it is entitled, Yahweh'S Hail. It is Saturday, December 5, 2009, Catholic time. Not Yahweh's time. And I'm putting this date up because it is just forth from the Gregorian and the Justinian calendars of Catholicism. I want to take and ask a question. Could you slide that over this way just a little, please? Thank you. What does the parchment say about fear? Well, the answer is that the books or the parchments mention 2 specific types of fear. The first type is beneficial and is to be encouraged. And the second type is a detriment and is to be overcome. The first type of fear is to fear Yahweh. This type of fear does not necessarily mean to be afraid of something. Did not Yahweh say the beginning of all wisdom is to fear Yahweh? Is that not what he said? He didn't say the beginning of wisdom was to fear religion. He didn't say the beginning of all wisdom was to fear the FBI in Washington, D.C., the Roman Caesars. He said the beginning of wisdom is to fear Yahweh, who not only could create everything, but has the ultimate power to destroy everything. Look what he said to Moses when the people were complaining. And he had brought them out of Egypt and across the dry land by the Red Sea. And the people were moaning and complaining like they always do. They wanted to go back to Egypt. They wanted to continue killing their firstborn sons. They wanted to continue putting the bodies of their babies into the walls of the cities when they didn't have time to pick a brick up and put in. The Egyptians made them stick a son in the wall. They wanted to go back to Egypt no matter how much they were in bondage and tormented. And they were complaining. Even after they saw Yahweh destroy the greatest military machine on the surface of the earth, in a heartbeat, when the waters closed upon the Egyptian military. And Yahweh said to Moses, stand aside. I'm tired of hearing the whining of these people. And there were 2.5 million people, men, women, and children. Yahweh said, I will start over with you. I'm going to destroy every one of them. And it was at that time that Moses said, oh Yahweh, Remember the promise you made to Abraham and the covenant to Isaac and to Jacob. Do you want the heathen people to say you brought them out of Egypt, your people, with a great right hand of strength, and led them into the wilderness to slaughter them? And it's one of the only times you will find recorded where Yahweh said unto Moses, I repent. But that is also showing mercy. Now, rather it is the relevance of awe of Yahweh, a relevance of his power and glory. However, it is also a proper respect for his wrath and anger. Does not Yahweh, the Almighty Father, Almighty God, doesn't he have a right to get angry? Doesn't he have a right to be angry at the sin that is committed so grossly and tremendously with his people? And what is sin? Sin is the transgression of the law. And yet religion tells you the law has been put away. It has? Well, then why does it say, I believe in chapter 10 of the book of Hebrews, that because of his crucifixion, a new covenant was brought forth, and that new covenant was to bring forth, as per the crucifixion, to reinstill his laws into the hearts and the minds of his people? Hasn't anyone read the book of Hebrews out there, you ministers and priests? The law isn't put away. It was reestablished at the tree of the cross.
So be it.
Now, in other words, the fear of Yahweh is a total acknowledgement of all that Yahweh is, which comes through knowing him, obeying him and his attributes. The fear of Yahweh brings with it many blessings and benefits. It is the beginning of wisdom and leads to good understanding, as written in Psalm 111, verse 10. And only fools despise wisdom and discipline, as shown in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7. Furthermore, the fear of Yahweh leads to life, rest, peace, and contentment, as recorded in the book of Proverbs, chapter 19, verse 23. And it is also the fountain of life, as recorded in Proverbs 14:27, and it provides a security and a place of safety for us, as recorded in Proverbs 14:26. Now, who wrote through the divine inspiration of the Holy Spirit all of these things, the Psalms of David and Proverbs? Well, they wrote through the divine of the inspiration of the Spirit of Yahweh to bring forth all this beautiful information as to what fear of Yahweh is all about. That it is a tremendous benefit. If we can put our personal attributes aside just for a little while and maybe spend a little time every day saying, praise Yahweh, and trying to clean up our personal life so we can become new wine in a new bottle. And remember, that bottle doesn't fill up overnight. And that old wine doesn't become new wine overnight. It's a process of time. And what's the saying? The fermenting of wine gives it better flavor. Next, please. You know, this is very interesting because the world's largest hailstone was the size of a volleyball. Now that's pretty awesome. I want you to consider this now and think about that. Of course, in your mind, as soon as I said volleyball, you pictured a volleyball in your mind, okay? Now, the biggest piece of hail, they said, was the size of a volleyball. Now, can you imagine watching that come down and hit Joe Smith's car, or truck, or house. Hit him. Right. It was raining volleyballs. Lincoln Star-Journal, Aurora, Nebraska. As a farmer and a National Weather Service spotter, Dale Obermeyer has spent more than 25 years pondering what they said was nature's fury. But whose fury is it really? Yahweh's fury. A 1991 hailstorm destroyed his entire corn crop. A tornado nearly took his mother in 1936. She held on to a tree while the twister uprooted trees and buildings around her. Never had he seen anything like what fell from the sky onto his yard on Sunday. He said, I looked outside. Now just think, you're sitting in your kitchen. You just got your cup of coffee. You just sat down to have your breakfast. And you look out the window, and it was raining volleyballs of hail. Shortly before 7 p.m. Sunday, residents of this Hamilton County town, population 4,225, watched in disbelief as hail larger than softballs fell to the ground. The storm also produced a small tornado about 2 miles west of Aurora that tore the roof from a metal barn and ripped trees from the ground. And in Aurora, hail damaged trees, homes, farm buildings, cars, and left small craters in people's yards. Do you remember just before the Israelites were in bondage in Egypt, that Yahweh brought forth a hailstorm upon Egypt, and it stripped all the orchards and the fruit trees and everything. It just decimated everything. He used hail as one of the punishments. And of course he turned the sand to lice, and he turned the water to blood. And Yahweh said there's nothing new under the sun. And remember, his storehouses and his treasures up here, sleet and hail, ice and snow, wind, that Yahweh not only created, but he controls. Now, C.J. Hash, general manager of Advantage Chevrolet, said hail the size of softballs struck several cars, causing nearly $50,000 in damage. At least one hailstone was measured at 6.5 inches in diameter and 17.4 inches in circumference. That's 2 inches larger than a softball. And Gene Orth, 57 years old, picked up the stone after it fell in his backyard. 2 other stones left holes in the roofs of his garage and home just north of Obermeyer's. And leaning on a wood deck behind his house Monday, he surveyed the damage. He said, I've seen hail the size of baseballs, and maybe bigger, but I've never seen them that big, he said. And the hailstone could be the largest ever recorded in the United States. It's definitely the largest recorded in the state of Nebraska, which fell in Potter in 1928 and measured 5.4 inches wide. Now, why am I talking about this? Why am I bringing this up? Because Yahweh our Father, as speaking through his prophets, including John the Divine, stated that in the very end time, there would be an earthquake bigger than any earthquake ever recorded or shall ever be again. And following that massive earthquake of destruction would come hail that Yahweh would pour forth down upon the earth. And this is what we're leading into today. The power of Yahweh and Yahweh's hail that he creates and uses. Now, Michael Lewis Laws, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Hastings, said he's unsure about the size of the hailstone that holds the U.S. record, which fell in Coffeyville, Kansas in 1970. At least one source, Lewis said, described it as measuring 5.7 inches in diameter and 17.5 inches in circumference. Well, that's a big snowball. But you see, it's not only big, how fast is it going when it's coming down? And how much does it weigh?
32 feet per second.
Now, some have even questioned whether the hailstone that fell in Orsh Yard is in fact the largest that fell in Aurora on Sunday. A team of storm chasers from Louisiana and Oklahoma said they measured a hailstone that fell in Obermeyer's yard at 7 inches in diameter. Scott Blair of the University of Louisiana Monroe's atmospheric science program said he thought the stone was probably twice that size before Obermeyer found it. So it was 14 inches in diameter. As he took photographs of the mishapen, 2-pound stone in Obermeyer's basement Monday, Blair expressed his awe at seeing such a large hailstone. Obermeyer says, you probably have in your hands the largest hailstone ever recorded in the United States. The 75-year-old retired Aurora farmer is keeping the stone in his freezer, wrapped in tinfoil beside his Cool Whip and bread. He said he and his wife Shirley were in their basement when the hail began to fall, and he said it just sounded like someone had pushed a stove or a refrigerator over on the roof. And there is the hailstone. Prior to it melting, it has melted a little, that he keeps in his freezer to show people the size of the hail that came down on his roof and in his yard, which they estimate was twice as big as that before it melted. Why am I saying this? Because Yahweh created what he is holding in his hands. And Yahweh will use that form of element as punishment against a wicked world. And that Yahweh Almighty God the Father is not just all love. He gets very angry when he is not obeyed or listened to.
That's right.
Just like your earthly father. Some of you recall your father would take his little knife out of his pocket. Everyone carried a little knife. That would be probably a violation of the Patriot Act now, to have a little knife in your pocket, okay? Every little young person I knew when I was little had a little knife in their pocket, okay, that go and make little switches or whatever. Oh, but we can't have that now. Homeland Security would come in with a SWAT team to get that knife. How dare you think that you can be trusted having that in your pocket? And the father would say, okay, here's the knife, go cut the switch. They go cut their switch, and that's what they got their licking with. Because you see, back then, it was understood and put in motion to spare the rod was to spoil the child. And there's many different punishments. You can stand them in the corner. You can set them on the chair and put a dunce cap on them. That's where most people belong today. Because we are becoming a land of retards because of the blind obedience of corrupt religion and politics. And we have walked away from the laws and the commandments and the statutes and the ordinances and the judgments of Yahweh our Father. We have pursued after man and mammon, the love of materialism, rather than pursuing Yahweh our Father. Next, please. I want to show a few more pieces of hail that Yahweh creates through his elements, like this one being held in this lady's hand right here. Now, if that came down and hit you, I'm going to tell you right now, you'd never forget it. In fact, even these over here, if they hit you, you wouldn't forget it. I know that this car, though it doesn't really have its own memory, but it is made of molecules, okay? Here's a piece of hail that hit this windshield. And over here is a ruler, 12 inches long, and this is after a hailstone in part of the United States, showing the different pieces and the sizes in equation to inches on this 12-inch ruler. Why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this to lay a platform for you, a platform of understanding, so when I get into my topic, I don't want any of you to tell me you don't know what a hailstone is. All right? And that especially goes for you sinners out there. And that especially goes for you ministers and preachers and priests, because I'm going to stick your feet in the fire today again. Because it is time for you to wake up your congregation. And it's time for you to profess the name of Yahweh to your people. Next, please. We're going to go for a little walk right now before we get into a deeper subject of Yahweh's power and authority. We're going to go into a walk, and we're going to go into a story. And I would like for you to mentally superimpose yourself into the story of the individual that is going to be thinking and saying things. Like, this is going to be you in this story. The worst storm in history. Will this be you and your family? Well, there's the hailstone, there's a 7-Eleven, and this is Main Street, USA. Could be any street. Could be Midland, Michigan. It could be Kokomo, Indiana. It could be Los Angeles, California, the city of angels. It could be Bay City. It could be Oshkosh, Wisconsin. This is a photograph from the NOAA Photo Library of the National Severe Storm Laboratory of a picture after a hailstorm in a city in America. Now this is you. This is you now as I'm going to bring forth the words. The winds blew, lightning flashed and thunder boomed. Trees bowed as the mighty winds rushed over them like a wild river. Leaves twist and turn wildly, finally snapping and shooting off with the driving winds. Winds so strong that no man could stand upright and no loose thing could stay still. It was a time of the wrath of Yahweh. The sky was black from debris, papers, leaves, dirt, and dust swirled and then shot into the current of violent winds along with all of the flotsam. Shingles flapped incessantly, some loosening their hold, joining the whipping winds, flying to an unknown destination. The intensity of the storm created tornadoes left and right, as if to toy with their recipient. The tornado would quickly twist down from its high perch, briefly touch the earth, shoot back up to the cloud from which it came. It was hard to tell if all of the damage was from the tornadoes or the driving winds. As the thunder cracked, it not only rocked your house, but startled your innermost being. Your stomach ached as you watched the fury outside your door. You had never seen a storm like this one. As lightning struck, it exploded with a violent crash and lit up the sky, showing the monstrous clouds. Clouds that towered so high you could not see the tops. You have seen storms before, but never like this. Before this one, storms seemed to have an unusual beauty, something to be admired because of its distant power. But now it was different. This storm was not like that. It was not distant and weak, but it was very close. And it was right on top of you and your family, and extremely strong. You watched with utter amazement as the sprinkling of rain turned into an out-and-out downpour. Instantly the streets flooded and became tiny rivers, and as the rain grew, so did the winds. It was all happening with such rapidity, so intense, so quick, so unmerciful. You watched your neighbor's house as shingles hung on for dear life, flapped their last, and were now part of the mass of trash flying in the air. What was once a covered roof was now bare. The exposed wood stood its ground the best it could, but soon weakened from the onslaught of driving winds. Boards nailed on tight were pried loose by the ghostly strong winds. You felt your own house rock and reel from the intensity outside. You were wet with sweat. Your mouth was dry to the bone. You were cold, and you were scared. For the day of Yahweh was at hand. You begin to lose hope. No one, nowhere was safe. There was no place to hide. The wind would find you. There was no place of safety. The wind would find you. And you felt as if you were tasting death itself. There was no sign of this storm dying down. Instead, it got worse. Yahweh was up there, and he was bringing it on. Bringing it on! A world of wicked people! Bringing it on and chastising his people, Jacob, Israel, the white Western European peoples, who would not turn from their wicked ways to obey him. The lightning continued to let you see what the storm would bring your way. Your neighbor's roof was completely gone. A skeleton of a home remained. And even this began to shake and shudder. You were afraid to leave your place for fear of seeing the remains of what was protecting you and your family. The lightning showed all of you something more horrible than you ever imagined. Something you would have never dreamed possible. Something that would have appeared as pure fiction if only you had not seen it with your own eyes. Hail. This was not marble or golf ball sized. It was not even softball sized. But that of a basketball. A basketball. Now, you're looking in your mind at a basketball, aren't you? Because it's size that we're thinking about now. You already know it's hail. And you know it's coming down, straight down, with tremendous speed. Can you imagine what a piece of solid ice the size of a basketball weighs, and it's coming down at how many hundreds of miles an hour? Maybe this is the love that the ministers talk about in their churches. Now, your family clung to one another as these balls of ice struck the surface of the earth. You watched in horror as one bomb after another hit your car and truck. The first one busted the front windshield, breaking the dashboard, and sent pieces flying. Remember, Yahweh said it's going to be so bad that your heart would become faint, and that your bowels would let loose, and you'd even go to the bathroom in your pants. You're going to be so scared of the wrath of Yahweh. Wow. Well, let's read on to what you're going to see. The next one was bigger, and the next one bigger still. And the biggest one was twice the size of the first. the size of 2 basketballs. One just missed the car, exploded on the driveway, and pieces of ice shot everywhere. You felt a sting on your cheek and knew that you'd been hit. Blood trickled down your face as you looked down to see that your wife had been hit by a bigger piece of the shrapnel of ice. Now you remember when Yahweh took our people and our ancestors, the true Israelites and the Hebrews of old, out of the severe bondage of Egypt? That he told them to sacrifice a lamb and to put the blood of the lamb upon the doorposts. That was symbolic of the Father himself coming in a flesh body to be the Lamb and the Redeemer of his people. And I will tell you at this time, I believe, as it was then, it shall be again, that you will reach up with your hands and you will plead the blood of Yahweh at Golgotha upon your home. That the destruction goes over and bypasses you, and you plead for the protection in the name of Yahweh. Not the Lord, not Jesus, not Christ, but the name of the everlasting Father, Yahweh. I plead your blood at Golgotha upon my home and to protect us, so that the death angel would pass over you. Well, let's read on. As you And as you comforted her, you heard an explosion in your house. Hail, twice the size of a basketball, was pounding your home into the ground. Your neighbor's home was now a broken skeleton. Pieces of the frame were still standing, but most of it lay as rubble or blown away by the ever-present pounding winds that were also swirling. You think these houses made of wood is going to protect you from the wrath of Yahweh to come? Well, let's read on. You watched in horror as the hail destroyed everything in its path. Your car and truck were a pile of mangled metal. Your yard was full of deep, muddy potholes from each of the mortars from the sky. Yahweh was casting projectiles, mortars from his what? Treasures of heaven upon the sinners and the wicked people. The hail continued, and your hope was gone. And all of you began to cry. And you hugged your wife and children as the tears stung the cut on your cheek. And they didn't know that they should call upon Yahweh. They didn't know they should go up to the doorpost and say, "Oh, Father, Yahweh, have mercy on us sinners. We plead your blood at Golgotha. Have mercy upon us. Let your death angel pass over us." Because their churches and religion didn't tell them to do that. They told them that he was all love and they could do whatever they wanted and he'd forgive them. They didn't even teach them his name.
That's the truth.
Well, let's read on. You see, though this is a story and I've superimposed you as this individual, this is what is going to come to bear. And even worse. For remember, the great hailstorm never came until after the greatest earthquake had ever hit the earth, greater and shall never ever be as great again. So you watched in horror as the hail destroyed everything in its path. And there you hugged your wife and children as the tears stung the cut on your cheek. And you looked up to the sky remembering the worst earthquake in history that you had just experienced. And now this, the worst storm in history. What could possibly be next? The return of Yahweh? So here are the hailstone details, for example. Here's a ruler, a 12-inch ruler, and here's another picture of a hailstone on that ruler itself. Now, what we have just read is a possible personal scenario during the worst storm of the earth, which will generate hail, which weighs a talent that Yahweh would send down. Why do we know that the hail is going to be the size of a talent? Because the Father foretold that. And a talent will weigh anywhere from 75 to 100 pounds. Now I want you to think about these things. Think about looking up and watching a piece of hail, 75 to 100 pounds, come whistling down about 350 miles an hour. Well, my gosh. So this is the scenario. And Yahweh said he's going to generate hail which weigh a talent that will be sent down. So let us review for a few moments the parchments, or what you call the scriptures, that were written as a warning to us that your churches and religion and your political spectrum do not tell you about. They tell you don't fear Yahweh God because he's all forgiving and all love. Well, he's all forgiving and all love for those who turn to him, change from their wicked ways, and call upon his name.